Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted and to proclaim that the captives will be released and the prisoners will be freed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. This is the point I want to make. As much as the central bank digital currencies are trying to push this forward and get it happening, it's too early. The infrastructure is not there yet. Okay, so it's not going to work for them. But more importantly, that I want you to understand here, okay, who's bringing on the central bank digital currency? The bankers.
Yep.
So now you have to think about this, right? It's very simple to understand. God's going to intervene and take down who? The bankers, okay? The money changers. Who's bringing on the central bank digital currency? The money changers. If God intervenes, not if, when God intervenes, God's going to flip the tables on the money changers. Guess what happens to the money changers' plans? They're over. So the central bank digital currency is going to come to a complete screeching halt. And it's going to fail. Why? Because the bankers get stopped. So as much as they're going to try to push Executive Order 14067, the central bank digital currency, Revelation 18, verse 4, it says, get out of her. Be not partakers of her sins. What's the kind of message here? And the message for this interview is honestly is Revelation 18, verse 4. Be not partakers of her sins. What does that mean? It means we're going to be in the world, but not of the world. What's the simplest way to never even worry about? Because the central bank digital currency will at some point come on. It'll be tied in with the mark of the beast in the future. But the point is, at some point, you're not stopping Revelation. This is the third seal. Then comes the fourth seal, then the fifth. And then you've got manifestation of all the horrible things that are going to come upon the earth later on, right? So what's the best way to be in the world and not of the world? Precious metals. If you truly in your heart feel something's completely wrong, it just doesn't feel right, okay? Gold and silver are an insurance policy against governments. If you want the best night's sleep ever, if you're holding gold and silver, you're going to have some really, really good night's sleeps. And lastly, I just want to finish this. We've talked about Passover. It's 16 days away. So this is what they've done with the money system. This is the Fed. This chart from the Fed. This is from the Fed, and this is from 2 years ago. Okay, Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, August 15th. Yep. Look what they did to the money supply. Look at that spike. Okay, those are trillions of dollars. Okay, that they're even admitting to, and it's probably hundreds of trillions, right? Yep. But this is what they're admitting to. And we know that the world is run by high-speed computers. So basically, all they do is they hide everything in the shadows all the time. So the whole money system is compromised. And basically, we are enslaved to this Babylonian money system. I was on your show in 2021. In August 15th, not even off by 24 hours, to the exact day Kabul fell from the day Nixon took us off the gold standard. We talked about this on our show like a year ago. Yep. Okay. And then what happened 9 days later? So you were the guy that I talked with about this. They took
this show here,
right?
In our last presentation, you talked about that Nixon moment, and of course, we hit that 50th anniversary. Let's start there for the audience who might not be aware of what we're talking about, and then we'll move into this agreement here between Saudi Arabia and Russia.
If this is going to be biblical, we're always supposed to see key events happen on specific dates. We had August 24th. August 24th was supposed to be a pivotal tipping point. The timing is truly spectacular because who would have known in our last interview that on August 24th, Saudi Arabia and Russia sign a military pact? Come on, that's historic.
Well, maybe just to add to that, does that also mean that now, if Saudi Arabia is out of the agreement with the United States, that they can now sell their oil in other denominations other than the US dollar?
If you sell it for gold, you get invaded. If you sell it for dinar, you get invaded.
Mhm.
If you sell it for the ruble, what do you think's going to happen?
And as
That's
soon
a
as you open the
contract.
door to selling oil for anything else than the US dollar, that triggers everybody around the world holding world reserve currencies to say, hey, we don't need this anymore to buy our oil.
And what is the problem in this equation, Jean-Claude? The 800-pound gorilla called Russia.
Mhm.
This is not Venezuela. This is not Iraq or Iran. This is Russia. We're talking a superpower who just signed a contract. That's one of the biggest events in human history in relation to finance.
Yeah.
When you have the 800-pound gorilla back Saudi Arabia, who apparently has a contract with the United States. So what happened to that contract? Saudi Arabia signed a military agreement with Russia. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is the beginning of the end of the petrodollar. And then you did that whole series, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so we've literally seen this happen. Now, this is the cool part. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies. She died on Rosh Hashanah, September 18th, I believe it was, of 2020 on Rosh Hashanah. That'd be day one. And then Roe v. Wade was overturned on June 24th, 2022, last year. That was 21 months and 6 days, 3 times 7 plus 6. It's a biblical calculation. If you run that same pattern from when Saudi Arabia signs agreement with Russia, that means by June, the end of June of this year, the financial system is blown up related to the petrodollar. My point I'm trying to make is when these biblical things happen, within 2 years, you see it manifest.
Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin sending an ominous message to the West during their 3-day summit this week. As new concerns rise, they are looking to undermine the U.S. dollar. Take a look at this. Vladimir Putin announced this week that Russia will begin using the Chinese yuan for international payments instead of the dollar. Saudi Arabia is also in talks with Beijing to do the same thing. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, they're in talks with Iran as well to consider an economic alliance with China and Russia. And they can even be joining the BRIC countries, which is an acronym for these countries here: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries all have emerging economies. So what happens if our economy and the U.S. dollar are no longer the world's dominant currency?
It's really hard to overstate exactly how catastrophic the abandonment of the U.S. dollar would be as the world's global reserve currency. Look, since the end of World War II, the dollar has been the safe place to go, and it's been backed up by a couple of things. It originally was backed up by gold, but President Nixon took us off the gold standard, so there's no hard asset backing up the dollar anymore for the last 50 years. But also it's been backed up by the strength and economic power of the United States and the fact that oil has always been traded in dollars. If that were to end, that would mean the end of the U.S. dollar.
It's a biblical calculation. If you run that same pattern from when Saudi Arabia signs agreement with Russia, that means by June, the end of June of this year, the financial system is blown up.
If Saudi Arabia decides to join with America's enemies here and start trading oil in different currencies, that is going to undermine the entire global economic system. And here at home, you know what it's going to mean for us? It's going to mean raging inflation, so much worse than anything we have ever experienced, Will. Yeah. And I'll tell you, they're setting it up so that they can then come to the rescue by introducing central bank digital currencies.
Who's bringing on the central bank digital currency? The bankers. God's going to intervene and take down who? The bankers, okay? The money changers. Who's bringing on the central bank digital currency? The money changers. If God intervenes, not if, when God intervenes, God's going to flip the tables on the money changers. Guess what happens to the money changers' plans? They're over. So as much as they're going to try to push Executive Order 14067, the central bank digital currency, Revelation 18, verse 4, it says, get out of her. Be not partakers of her sins. what's the kind of message here? And the message for this interview is honestly is Revelation 18, verse 4. Be not partakers of her sins. What does that mean? It means we're going to be in the world, but not of the world. What's the simplest way to never even worry about? Because the central bank digital currency will at some point come on. It'll be tied in with the mark of the beast in the future. But the point is, at some point, you're not stopping revelation. This is the third seal. Gold and silver are an insurance policy against governments.
Ominous warning. I hear you. Saudi Arabia is the tipping point. Oil trading in dollars is the tipping point.
Beverly Hills Precious Metals Exchange is a client-focused firm devoted to assisting our clients with precious metals. Our clients range from first-time to serious coin collectors and investors seeking to add precious metals to their investment portfolios. We are not interested in volatile investments, leveraged products, and intangible assets. With rising inflation and the devaluing of the dollar hurting middle-class families, investing in gold and silver ensures protection for your hard-earned money. Save the value of your money today by investing in gold and silver at Beverly Hills Precious Metals.